Coogs House, unless you've been living under a rock at this point, you've heard that Houston has signed five-star quarterback Conner Weigman. Man, oh man, what a great day. Let's talk about that day. A special guest.
You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, a podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston Moore teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, joined tonight by who's become kind of one of our recruiting insiders here in a weird recruiting of the transfer portal kind of specificity. Martin Markin. Martin, I got to ask, I guess on Wednesday night when the news hit on Twitter at 9 o'clock, what were you doing, and were you expecting that news at that moment?
I think me and my wife were working out in the garage. So, I mean, I'd heard buzz, from some of the other local guys that basically if it's not Wednesday, then you should start biting your nails because it might not happen. So I've just been kind of looking out for today, but I hadn't really bothered to pinpoint when it would happen. But I mean, it was still exciting to see. Of course, it's still a big deal.
So, you heard by Wednesday if it hadn't happened, it wasn't going to happen. You say, right? You obviously wrote a piece analyzing his game once the interest was talked about. I think it was Wednesday or Thursday of a week ago. Actually, technically before the portal had opened.
It was on the 6th, whatever day of the week that was last week.
And it was like Sports Illustrated. It was like a national outlet, right? It wasn't just it might have been their A&M channel or whatever, but
yeah,
it was talking about connecting Conner Weigman to Houston. Conner Weigman, 5-star quarterback, 6'2", 6'3", depending on the publication, 215, 220, depending on the publication. It ran 4.49 in high school. I don't know if he still runs it or not, but very accurate. Starting quarterback, 15 games, the SEC. From Cyprus, coming back to Houston, although not that College Station's that far away. That's the TLDR for people that are catching up. Martin, that comes out last week. You write a piece for Go Coogs about what his mechanics are. You watch some film on to get ready for that. You had heard, I guess, throughout the process that this is very realistic. You mentioned that people were waiting on Wednesday. You're much more even keel about these things. I was really excited about it. What was as you saw this thing unfolding, what was your feeling about it for the U of H?
I think it's a huge deal. I am adamant that he is certainly a former 5-star. Once you hit campus, all that goes away. But it doesn't remove the air that comes along with it, right? You're still going to discuss him in that manner because these recruiting services they're predicting the first round picks for that class. Essentially, that's what 5-stars are. So, they're evaluating their talent, and obviously they have massive talent if they're giving them those grades. And yeah, I mean, it's a kid, like you mentioned, he's from Cyprus, which is essentially Houston.
I'm just picking a name. I'm just pointing out the neighborhood there. He's a Houston kid. He's a Houston kid.
Right. But the point being, he decided to come back. SEC caliber player. He had some weird injury stuff. This year, he just lost his job to Marcel Reed even after he got hurt. I think Marcel Reed is just a better player. That's not really his fault. But he's only played in 15 games in his career, and he's not even thrown 400 passes. So he's got about a season's worth of experience. And you kind of see that in this film. You see what scouts saw, and you also see some, immaturity, for lack of a better way to explain it, in his I don't know if processing is the right word because I don't want to get too in-depth about it. I'm not going to pretend like I'm a quarterback guru, but you can see that he just needs more experience. But at the end, it's a huge deal for the Coogs. I mean, they just went 4-8 for the second year in a row. There were questions about the quarterback. I mean, Zeon has ability. There is an offense, as you have said, that exists that he can succeed in, and I think a team could be good at and good with. But immediately, Conner Weigman is the most accomplished passer on the roster.
Yeah, I mean, bluntly, we just saw Army win the American Athletic Conference with an offense that I think Zeon would do very well in. You could run that
Yeah.
at Houston with Houston quality athletes, Big 12 quality athletes, and be very good. I'm not, right. The deal is it would look very different from everything else about this team right now.
Mhm.
And I think that's really kind of the deal. Is it's like an oil and water kind of thing, right? You mentioned he looks young to you on film. In trying to be, trying to even keel myself, not get too excited about the fact that Houston just got this kid to come back. Um, I, I feel like the thing I'm most critical on is his arm strength. It's the
Yes.
deep stuff. And you nodded. I assume that's also yours. And then B, is that potentially injury related? Is that a guy just hadn't been out there enough related? What is there any way that that's all connected, or am I making stuff up?
I mean, I think it's a fair assumption to make. It's an AC joint. This year was his injury. In the past, I didn't go that far to check. Probably bad on me for not doing more research.
I
But
believe 2023 was a foot, and
okay,
could
yeah,
not. Depends on how bad it was, but he missed
yeah,
most of the season.
yeah. So AC joint was the one he was dealing with this year. It very well could be something that affected his throwing strength, and maybe as he heals, he'll gain some back, assuming he lost any. But I see velocity and uh, strength issues. He can push the ball 50 yards downfield, but he has to make the decision quickly. Like if it's not on time and he's like evading a sack and he like then notices the guy 30 yards downfield, the defender might have a chance to like minimize the separation because the ball's going to float. Like I said, he can push it down the field, but it's not going to get there in a hurry. And then velocity issues, the underneath stuff, like the outs, he's got to throw, the timing's got to be there for him. Otherwise, that gives the defenders a chance to undercut some of the stuff, which I think you saw this year. I think LSU, and then I think it was Mississippi State. I might be getting the team wrong, but there was an out. They got picked.
Well, and that on the far side out route can also be an arm strength thing. It doesn't have to be 50 yards downfield to be where that shows off, I guess. When staying on Conner Weigman, because I also want to get to the future of this whole thing in a second.
Mm-hmm.
You've been in these offices when big commitments and signings happen. What is Fritz, new hire Nagel, Sean Bell? What is going on in that office on Wednesday when this edit gets that's all coming out?
I have to make an assumption for them specifically. I mean, I know you're asking a general question.
Yeah.
To be fair. But, for something like this is a pretty quick turnaround at most. At most it's 3 days. 3 days worth of buildup, right? Because he was only technically in the portal on Monday, and you can't talk to him until then.
Nothing else would have happened before then. Nothing.
Nope,
absolutely positively nothing.
So, I imagine they're pretty excited. Again, we can't overstate the caliber of player that he was expected to be. And you have no reason to think that because every coach thinks that they're going to be the one that figures out a player, right? So Slade Nagel is like, watch me work, boys. Watch me take this 5-star and do what he's supposed to. So they're going to be pumped that they got this guy. It's their second year in this program that everybody saw as a dumpster fire, and that they rebuild has been used ad nauseum to describe what Fritz is going to have to do with this program. So year 2, where you get your first real crack at the portal, you bring in a former 5-star. They can't pat themselves on the back enough right now.
It's just crazy. It's like I said, that's just so fast. Did I anticipate them bringing a Houston area kid back? Obviously, they were going to make a quarterback. Yes. Did I anticipate it being a class of 2022 5-star top 3 quarterback in America in his class? No, I didn't. Right? Those are two very different, very, very different things. You mentioned in talking about the process taking 3 days and stuff like that. First of all, I guess I want to point out the edit hits tonight, and I don't know who in the office works on these edits. I guess that's really probably more of an on-3 thing. It was pretty legit. I don't know if you saw it, the walking through downtown, the moon behind him. It was pretty clean. I feel like, and this is not to be negative about the coaching staff, when they made gotten big commitments in more high school traditional senses, they've done some like tweeting and gift dropping and whatever, and like lead up to it. And this one, it felt like you're saying, like Wednesday, waiting around, and then all of a sudden it just like boom, on three's got it. Like
Right.
is there any intention there for a staff? Or are they just too busy on a weekday like that?
I don't think they're too busy. They are busy. I'm not saying they're not. I know what this time of year is like. It's hectic. I mean, they're probably like if I was still there, I'm probably still trying to find guys at this time of night to like bring in tomorrow to present. But you're never too busy to celebrate this. Like this is just like you just have to. It's probably Connor's wishes and how he wanted to announce it, and they respected that. Is my guess, because while people were cutting into the surprise in the sense that like they created the buzz, right? I mean, I wrote an article on the 6th. You guys have been hinting at it. You know, it was probably like this was his chance to post it. So he was like, hey, me and Hayes, assuming him and Hayes had it worked out, he's going to drop it at this time that I'm going to commit. So let's stay hush about me visiting and what we're doing and stuff like that. That's my guess.
It makes a ton of sense. Like you said, it's the kid's moment, and I was about to say it's the only time you get to do it, but it was a pretty big deal when he committed to A&M too. So it's kind of his second time to do it. But anyway, I want to ask you questions about what this means for the immediate and big picture future in a second. But first, today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Best place to get last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Use code LOCKEDONCollege, you get $20 off your first purchase. They have all kinds of cool AI tools, so make sure that you're getting the best deal and value. I like that if you get tickets and then find them somewhere else in the same section and roll for less, Game Time will credit you back 110% of the difference. So make sure you go to Game Time, use Game Time Picks today. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Park Ranger Locked on Coogs, and Martin still chuckles at that one. Gotta love a little bit. So big signing, Conner Weigman coming to town, staying in town, I should say, coming home. Former 5-star quarterback, SEC starting caliber quarterback, and frankly has 2 years of eligibility to grow under Slade Nagel. In looking at Slade, in looking at Conner, I think a lot of people are trying to draw comparisons to Michael Pratt, and I actually think that that's fair. Do you think it's fair? And if so, what makes it a fair comparison as a guy that does a lot of film study?
I meant to go back and look at some of Pratt's stuff. I don't really know a ton about him other than he got an opportunity in the league after. I mean, I imagine that Nagel went into this with the idea that he had a specific quarterback in mind. So Weigman likely fits that. I think it's probably similar in the sense that, like, if you look at Weigman's first 2 years, he was 16 touchdowns to 2 picks. So he's protecting the ball. He's also getting in the end zone. My guess, I'll put money on it, that Pratt probably didn't turn the ball over a lot, and they ran the ball well. So I'm sure the intention here is to get some beef up front so they can run the ball, and Weigman is going to be able to pick his shots, find some openings on the outside, and it's going to be more about, like, he did say they're going to be looking for big plays, which I think are going to exist, but it's going to be more about the run game setting that up, I think, than it is him picking people apart.
So let's talk about that, because I think I know you're a big fan of his, and it's easy to become one in Rashawn Sanford, right? Ray's a great run. I mean, one of the best football players on the team, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he recommitted. He posted the graphic saying he's coming back, right? And I think it's, first of all, interesting that we're at that point in college football where you have to recommit every year. But I think undersized, shifty, has some pop when he hits you in the hole. I think he feels a lot like Tajay Spears. I don't think that's a crazy comparison to make. Tajay got a shot at the league. I think Ray deserves one. Do you think that, you're putting some offensive linemen together with the thought that this could very well be that Tulane group. I know you said you hadn't watched a whole lot of extensive film yet on this, but like the pieces just on the surface feel similar enough, right?
Yeah. I want to say they found Darnell Moody at some point there as well. Is Boogie that? I don't know. Boogie's shifty though.
Super shifty.
We've seen him in space with the offense that existed this year doing something, and in the one game where Barbe wasn't calling plays, he looked good. He's a good football player. Yeah, I mean, I see that. I imagine they've locked up a quarterback that everybody has to be surprised that they got. I mean, I know people were like, this makes sense, logical sense, but that's not always how things work. It's often not. And so they got that part figured out, which is the hardest part. Now they have to work on the offensive line, which is going to be redundant, but that's truly the hardest part of the offensive line is finding 5 guys that are going to work together and do what you want to do. And so if they can get that figured out, I think we've said together here that there are skill players that you can win with if you can just run the offense you want to run with good offensive line.
Well, and you mentioned the lineman. Part of the deal is you can't just find one. You got to find 5. I will say, for what it's worth, you mentioned people didn't think they were going to get the Locked On group. We have a group chat amongst the guys who do different Big 12 shows. They all thought I was crazy when I said this. They were like, "There's no way. Like, what are you talking about? Like that? Like, just." I was like, "Man, just wait. Right? I'm really rubbing it in a little bit in the text message, right, in the text thread these days. The deal there, you mentioned the offensive lineman. The other immediate future thing people are already connecting the dots here on, both because it was rumored or tweeted out that Kam Dewberry was on campus with Conner Weigman. Kam Dewberry was in the same high school recruiting class as Conner Weigman at A&M. He went to Tascasita. A lot of things are lining up to where, is it 6'5", 325? I might get that anyway. Big interior offensive lineman, kind of road grader.
6'4", 330 according to PFF, but yeah, big
guy.
Yeah.
That is he next? They have there were talks about Jason Brooks, who is another guy from Oklahoma State, also from the city of Houston. Could he come back home? In your experience, right? Do you feel like that momentum is real? Will those guys theoretically, if it's not those two, if it's other two, will bigger name offensive linemen want to come play with Weigman now that they know the quarterback's done?
I mean, this is this is uncharted territory for me because we just never brought in a name like this.
And I should say, we say a name like this is a name. Like the
Yes.
people paying attention, national people, not just Big 12, not just Houston, like national top end people were paying attention to where Weigman did.
No, this kid played as a true freshman for Jimbo Fisher at A&M.
Right.
He threw 8 touchdowns. Is a true freshman in the games that he played. This isn't just a guy who got a shot and it didn't work out. He showed signs that he was going to be a promising player. So we signed, Matt Golden, which was a big deal, but like he is a receiver as a part of a team. You don't really structure a team around a receiver unless it's like Calvin Johnson. And it's not Matt Golden's great. That's not what I'm doing. But, getting Weigman is I mean, it's not even comparable to the Kyle Allen thing because the transfer portal is just different now. It's a different animal. This is a completely different era to discuss somebody transferring. So Kyle Allen didn't work out at A&M, so he had to find another place where he was going to have the opportunity to start. Conner Weigman could have gone. I'm sure there were an abundance of teams reaching out to give him an opportunity because you don't have to sit out a year and all that, So it's a big deal to get him, and I do think that it is going to bring momentum. I think generally where there's smoke, there's fire. Here we are talking about the fact that Conner Weigman is going to be a Houston Cougar. So, there's truth to that alone. And then the Dewberry thing makes sense, though I will say him going to Missouri scares me. If you're a Cougar fan, I don't know if you know or if you're paying attention, but Brandon Jones got fired from Houston, and he is now the offensive line coach at Missouri, has been since he was let go here, and he's done a great job recruiting.
I don't know what Dewberry thought of Houston as a high school kid, but B. Jones would have been the O-line coach when he was in high school at Houston, right? I think There's some connection there. Bluntly, they've got a large NIL package in Missouri, like doing very well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I could see all those things lining up. I say his name because he's naturally been linked to Weigman. But generally speaking, on the offensive line side, Houston needs linemen, plural. And I guess the thought is like, can you really spin Weigman into now come play with him? Like, it's like the same way if you sign a great point guard, you pull in some shooters and stuff like that, or a great center or whatever. Like, does it function like that? Kind of, maybe, sort of.
I think it can. I mean, I think, Miami's a different animal, but like I'm sure Kam Ward going there brought in players, and O-lineman wanted to then go there. I'm sure Sam Brown, when he transferred out of U of H and went to Miami, that was a factor in his decision.
Well, and specifically with Sam, right, there were the videos of him and Kam working out before Sam even put himself in the portal, right?
Yeah.
I remember people acting like that meant Kam could come to the U of H once upon a time.
Yeah. So almost when he transferred, before he transferred to Washington State, there was some talk in the office, but he would have had a city or fine tune, and it just wasn't happening. I think that's my speculation. I'm not sure people even knew my name when I was in the office at the time, so I didn't know a lot, but I do remember the conversation coming up about Kam Ward when he was leaving Incarnate Word.
Well, I was talking about when he left Wazoo, though, because there was the video that broke out that summer of them working out, and like, again, because Kam is from the Houston area. Sam obviously was in the Houston area, and they were working out, and people were reading that as if Kam could come to Houston, and what it meant really was that Sam was going to follow wherever Kam went. Is what really happened there.
Yeah.
But we're on the better side of that one now. We're pulling guys in theoretically, to play. As a recruiter, as a guy involved in this, are you, especially in the modern version of college football, are you so focused on next season you're not worried about? I mean, you've got Carlisle class 2025 as a freshman coming in. You've got Keyshawn Henderson coming in after that. Are you just like one day at a time, one game at a time, 1 year at a time? Or do you actually think people are projecting that far into the future with Weigman coming in?
I mean, I'm sure there is a plan for assuming Weigman is here for 2 years, right? Like there's a gradual plan to his successor. I don't think that they care necessarily how Austin Carlisle is going to feel about this. Like, yes, they want him to believe that he is going to be the starter at some point. Otherwise, why did he get recruited? Why did he pick Houston? And it's not to say I don't have any intel there. That's just how I would think about it. We're bringing Weigman in to be the starter because he's shown that he can play at a high level in what many would call the toughest conference in college football, but we'll deal with that conversation later. But if nothing else, Carlisle can watch somebody who's done it before. So I do think we've kind of had this conversation off air. Weigman is not necessarily a bridge in the sense that like he's not good, but he's a bridge in the sense that like now you don't have to worry about an immediate starter, and you can bring Carlisle in to maybe be the starter in 2 years, or he and Keyshawn can compete in 2 years, assuming Keyshawn isn't just a beast at receiver when he comes in playing with Weigman. So.
Well, and the other deal is that let's say Weigman shows up and has 4,200 yards and a great touchdown, then he's a pro. Like
he's transferred to the NFL.
Yeah, he's not going to wait around for that money. So and I think that's a win-win situation too, obviously.
Yeah.
But that would only be the redshirt year for Austin, right? That wouldn't even be a whole lot of time spent.
Right.
The other fish in this is Zeon Chriss. We mentioned that, and I'm going to maintain that if you want to run a different offense with different linemen and different receivers and different running backs, you could win games with him at quarterback. But this is not that offense. These are not those linemen. These are not those receivers, etc. Is Zeon Chriss about to jump in? Like honestly, what's he going to do?
I feel like if you look at the existing players on the roster now, he's the odd quarterback out. As far as what he offers, let's say everybody stays that's currently on the roster with Weigman coming in, right? You have Conner Weigman, Austin Carlisle, a true freshman coming in, Caleb McMichael, you have Uyale. I don't know if I mentioned him already, and then you have Zeon Chriss. I think that's all the scholarship guys.
I think so, yeah.
Zeon is a completely different type of quarterback than the rest of them. So it might make sense for him to leave. I don't think they'll be necessarily kicking him out the door because they know what he can offer and he's a great athlete and they can make something happen with him if that's the route that they would have to take. But I kind of feel like the offense is going to start now moving in that direction. They're going to start recruiting towards building around that, and they're going to hope that Weigman is going to be the player that takes them forward. And so you would think that a Uwe and Caleb are going to be competing for quarterback too.
Assuming Austin's redshirting, I guess if he's not redshirting, it's also competing for quarterback too, right?
Right. But even then, and I know Austin's a good athlete, but he probably fits in better with what they're going to do than it is what Zeon does.
My understanding is he's definitely more of he definitely throws, like as a incoming freshman, throws the ball a lot better.
So yeah, I mean, I think Zeon Chriss would be an incredible running back, but I think that he's not so bad of a passer that you don't have him pass the ball. So I mean, I don't. If he decided to leave, I would understand, and I would hope he finds a good spot for himself.
Yeah, I mean, he beat TCU. He beat Utah. I'm never gonna. Those were fun memories. He's never gonna be bad in my book, right? I'm not.
Yeah.
And those are never gonna be bad. So.
He technically was the starting quarterback for, at this moment, the best season in the history of U of H in the Big 12. So I mean,
there you go. There for at least the next 6 months, right? Because until August or whatever.
Yeah.
All right. So realistically, I mean, this is all secret behind the doors talking. There sounds like could be a lot of people visiting Houston very soon.
Mm-hmm.
Getting this done today felt very intentional with people coming this weekend.
Yes.
Now that you got the quarterback and we talked about the offensive line, that kind of stuff, are things going to move quicker, slower? I mean, this feels like it's going to be a fast-paced thing between now and Christmas.
Well, you have 2 weeks to bring kids on campus. So we'll know so they have the 9th. From the 9th, they have like a 2-week window to bring kids on campus per the recruiting schedule. So within that 2 weeks, we'll have a very good idea of like what things are going to look like. There's another window that will open up for guys that decide to leave in the spring. But as far as like going into spring ball, we will more or less know what that's going to look like after 2 weeks. Because after that, I think it's a dead period immediately after that, and you can't have kids on campus. The most you can do is just like communicate with them on the phone. So, yeah, I mean, by this weekend, I would imagine that we'll see 5 to 6 commitments, maybe more than that. It just depends on how much they're churning kids in and out.
Only because people are inevitably going to ask. He's a fan favorite. People love the kid. People had hearts broken this week when like Joseph Manjack jumped in the portal.
Yeah.
Right. Does this shift anything for Joseph or others that are in the portal that, Jonah, whomever, that maybe want to come back?
I can't speak for Jonah, but I think Manjack has decided that his time here is done, just based on what I've heard. And that's fine. I mean, that's his right. Good for him. I hope he moves on to find something better. I just think he wants to be certain, and I'm speaking for him without having spoken to him. So just to be clear, this isn't Manjack's. These aren't Manjack's words.
Right. You're not his mouthpiece here or anything.
No, not at all. But I just think he's got 1 more year left to play college football. And I imagine he wants to make money for playing football at some point, playing on Sundays. So he probably wants to go somewhere where he's certain of what the offense is going to offer and what he's going to be able to offer it. And while this is a great day for U of H, it still leaves questions as far as what the team is going to look like come October.
Definitely. And like I said, that we talked about Zeon Chriss having a bunch of good memories. Joseph Manjack's got a lot more of them. There's no reason to feel bad or be negative about it. I think it's an inevitable question when you saw some skill players jump in the portal. Like, would this be enticing to them? And it is case by case, like you said. I'd imagine, bluntly, that several of them jumped in the portal Monday and Tuesday with an idea that this at least could happen, right? Like they went ahead and jumped in knowing that this could happen.
Mhm.
And they may have had a better idea whether or not it would than you or I did. But Martin, writing for Go Coogs, doing all kinds of stuff over there. You got anything in the works where people find out what you're doing these days?
I am doing my best to keep track of who the Cougs are offering in the transfer portal. Trying to keep my ear to the ground about like visits and stuff. So I don't really want to bother with wasting my time with like providing a scouting report on a kid that's not even going to come to Houston. But as the commitments start filing in, I do intend on with Go Cougs having us publish some like scouting reports to give you an idea of like what a player offers. A lot of it may just be that boy nice because it's like an O lineman who's big, and we're going to be happy to get an O lineman. You know what I mean? It might be some of that. But like I said, I am trying to keep track of who they're offering. Unfortunately, some kids don't post the offers. I don't know why, but they just don't want people like us bothering them on Twitter. But
if I got Houston offers, you couldn't tell. You'd hear about it from every platform available.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean that's really in the immediate what I'm trying to do. I do some high school recruiting, so that's like where I make money with Catapult. So some of those, weekly, like Wednesdays, we post like a Texas report for kids that we think are under recruited. And I do pass those names along to people that I still know at Houston in case, they haven't seen them. But most of the time they do a really good job of keeping track of the area. So, but yeah, I mean, that's what I have going on for the most part.
And then Martin, obviously, when the next 5-star or former 5-star comes on, we'll talk some more about the process and how things got there. But I don't feel like these days happen very often. You got to enjoy it, and maybe we'll get to be that kind of program soon. But right now, this is one to enjoy.
Yeah, maybe we'll be like basketball, and we can just like fawn over the several 5-stars we get at some point. But
even then, when the third one committed, I was like, "Oh my god, they got it!" So anyway,
it's wild, man.
It's wild. It's a wild time. It's a great time to be a Houston Cougar. That's Martin. I'm Parker. This is Locked on Coogs, breaking down Conner Weigman, your newest Houston Cougar. Hit subscribe, hit the bell so you know we're live whenever the next big signing happens. Locked on Coogs, primarily Locked On podcast. Now there's your team every day. Go Cougs.